I don't think you and I are conspiracy theorists. We are truth theorists. And I know for a fact, as much as what I know, that food and marketing is done in such a way that it will be impacting the sale of a drug. Because if you listen to the word food and drug administration, why those things are all in the same line should be very alerting. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm telling you the dead truth here, that if something is pushed and marketed as heart healthy, brain healthy, but it's also marketed by the same people that do the drugs, then you should stop and think.
Hello and welcome back, Yvette. And here we are. From Pills to Purpose is our podcast, and where we engage in conversations that moves you from medicated to motivated. So how are you doing today?
Motivated to tell people to get moving in the right direction. Definitely. We have some interesting topics to cover here, and we decided to have a look at questions that we get that's very general, and also dive in a bit deeper, give it a little bit of flesh. And I know people always ask us, what do you do? So one of the questions you got, just share that with us, Johann, so we can interpret that a bit.
One of our duties as pharmacists is to provide consultation on prescriptions when people come to pick it up. Now, this question came from a parent, and many people have children and they want their children to thrive. And some children can be a little bit rambunctious. And I've got a problem with the teachers being the ones to make a diagnosis in many cases. But I think also a teacher have a responsibility in many cases to provide feedback to a parent when they notice certain things. But this parent came in for a prescription for their 9-year-old child for a brand new ADHD medicine. So in my consultation, first thing obviously is ask, have your child used this medicine before? Now, this time the answer was, oh, doctor, he has not used this one before. He has used a different one in the past, but it totally made him a zombie, so we did not like that, so we stopped using it. And that is very common with the ADHD medicine, especially in young kids, because if you're used to your child always being friendly, always playing, now they're just sitting there staring at the wall, obviously this might not be the drug for them. But anyway, so we started talking about it, and I told her, well, one thing you want to make sure is to give this first thing in the morning, but absolutely give it after breakfast, because we found with ADHD medicines in these young children that it also suppresses their appetite. So first give them give them their breakfast, but not snowflakes. Give them a good protein breakfast, because a protein is way more important than the carbohydrates. They're going to get carbohydrates in anyway because they're children. But make sure you give him a good protein breakfast. And the discussion went on, so why? And she keeps on saying, but why protein? Why can't she give him a cereal? And you know as well as I do, Yvette, that these cereals are so sugar laden, and they cause, and what does the sugar do? And all these additives, it causes a lot of brain inflammation. And one of the side effects from a brain inflammation is ADHD symptoms. So sometimes
And that makes you think.
yeah.
And again, we spoke in our previous podcast about taking in penicillin and you get a skin rash. You give your kids these boxed foods and they act weirdly and you wonder what is wrong. But you love to give them the label of ADHD. You don't look a little bit further, a little bit deeper, because it's become such a common thing that every child has this. And I'm not insensitive, I'm not ignorant, but I'm telling you now that a lot of these labels will affect your child going down the line. So if you can stop that now and don't do the boxed foods, you might have a totally different child.
Yeah. And you know, another thing about brain health, because that is something that totally intrigues me. Brain chemistry is so interesting. It's just, I can't stop learning about it. And the guy who wrote the book says is so many times that the teachers, because will tell the parents of young boys especially that they've got ADHD. But if you look at the differences between boys and girls, boys have testosterone at young ages way higher than what young girls do. So they are way more active because their hormones are completely different. They need to be stimulated in different ways in order for them to sit down and actually learn something than what girls do. Girls, average, not all of them, they learn when they can sit down and listen. But boys, most of the time, need to be an active learner. You have to give them something to do in order for them to learn. That was an interesting observation from this. Then this guy was actually a research brain specialist, and talking about the brain inflammation and the things that we give them to eat. We have to many times just look back and see, do you want your child drugged? And one other thing about these ADHD medicines, research also has shown that if your child is not weaned off of the ADHD medicine by the age of 12, they'll be a lifelong user of some type of drug that involves the
Stimulant.
central nervous system.
Yep.
And
And
some
you
of
know
them
what
might
you
actually become addicts.
And you touched on something that's not medical medicine advice, anything like that, but a very strong thought of mine has always been that the young boys in the schooling system today, it's like putting a round peg in a square hole. It doesn't fit the teacher's narrative, it doesn't fit the school's narrative. And so many times these kids get ostracized. And it's so wrong because this is probably the way that we are shutting down creativity, we're shutting down their development. The boy is supposed to be out there running and chopping wood and climbing trees and, breaking a leg. But it doesn't fit the narrative because we have now put them in a schooling system where from 8 o'clock until 3 o'clock, they've got to be these well-behaved little pinions just sitting there. And it doesn't mean that your child is lacking a drug. It means that your child has a certain personality and that they will be one day be creative. They will be a musician. They will go out there and be an artist, an athlete, so many things. And I really find it hard when we try and channel a child's personality with a drug. That is one part of the whole discussion of that we can spend days on. But the biggest percentage of things we are dealing with now, because what you were saying there, very true. It was a very big percentage of boys that initially were diagnosed with this because they were out of control. But now you see the situation, Johann, you get that family and they have that little boy. But you'll also find that his 6-year-old sister and his 10-year-old brother and the 11-year-old sister, they're all on that medication. Isn't that a red flag?
For
Because
sure.
if you want to tell me an entire family has this deficit, I
You know
do
what?
think you look at the pantry then.
I just wanted to say there might be a common denominator in not only the parents of those children, but what they're being fed. And we've talked about this a lot about, yes, grandma had diabetes and great grandma had diabetes. But one thing that we found is it's not as much a gene as it is the gene of the diet that is passed down from generation to generation to generation.
Exactly. So you learn the recipes, you learn the lifestyle, you follow that same thing, you do it, and then you expect different results.
Yeah, absolutely. The unfortunate, there's a thing to say about epigenetics. And that is one TED talk, the girl said it so well. She said, you are what you eat, but you are what your mom ate, and you're also what your grandmother ate.
Mm-hmm.
But what actually happens, the epigene is the area surrounding the gene. Let's say it's the backyard to your house.
Mm-hmm.
So if you control the backyard, the house in the end is going to look a lot different. So if you keep bombarding this epigene with certain conditions,
Mm-hmm.
it actually potentiates from generation to generation. Grandma probably got diabetes when she was only 70 years old. Mom got diabetes maybe when she was 60. And now you're 40 and your child is in the teens and they all have diabetes. Now it's a gene.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's still the diet.
And you'll also Studies have shown that when you look at those moms, the more of the moms that had gestational diabetes, the bigger the chance of their child being diabetic.
Yes.
And the bigger that child's child is of being diabetic. So that impact does come through the family line, but again, it's the food they feed them. So when we go back to the family of 4 kids, all of them are now diagnosed as ADHD. They all get these medications. And a question you asked this mom that I found extremely interesting is, and this is always this question Johann and I ask, so like, what do you feed the kids? And the first answer is always, oh, we eat a very healthy diet.
Yes.
But then you ask something that's a little bit more specific that most people don't, because a healthy diet can mean so much.
Yeah, because the mom especially asked me, so, but what am I going to give him to eat? I said, well, fry him an egg in butter before school. I said, but make sure it's butter. She said, oh, I use the best butter. I said, let me show you. It's because the butter refrigerator is right next to the pharmacy. Our pharmacy is the coldest place in the store because we've got the meat freezer on one side and the dairy freezer on the other side. It's never, in the middle of summer, it's cold. Anyways, step out, go to the butter refrigerator, and she pulls off this nice little beautiful plastic bucket. This one, we use this one. It's got a little heart on it. No, that's not butter. I said, that's canola oil. And it says right in there in a big green stripe, now made with canola oil.
It says something like spreadable butter made with canola oil.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And I told her this is one molecule away from plastic.
Mm-hmm.
You should not, and her eyes just get really wide. I said, I always thought I was doing my family a favor by buying this expensive butter.
Well, it goes back to what we always say. Why don't you eat the stuff God made? Butter is as old as the hills. Butter comes from the cows, comes in. It's a human appropriate food. It's not a man-made food. Why would you opt for something else? And what you were saying earlier on when you said about the inflammation of the brain and the impact of the foods, it takes us back again to the oils. Oils are so, so important. And if a young child is not exposed to the correct oils, you're going to get some off behavior. And we don't just sit with ADHD, we sit with children that have like serious behavioral issues. I'm not talking about the kid that's just he doesn't have attention because he wants to go run around. I'm talking about the one that it's like there's a trip switch that's not on in the brain. And we experienced this many years ago with friends of ours whose son, very active, always running and like really creative and wanting to do stuff and getting forced into a system at school of having to take these medications. And for me, knowing how important oils and fats are for the brain, I said, well, how about we start supplementing him on a very good high-grade omega-3 salmon oil? And the reason I say very high-grade, because it's got all the complexes in all 8 of them. It's not this just watered-down thing that's got one thing in there and it's all boiled and everything. And started giving to this kid. Now, again, we didn't change anything on the diet, because I was aware that these parents were a little bit more into real food. So we changed one thing, changed the oil that he was exposed to every day. Within 2 weeks, the school sent a letter saying, we are so thankful that we got your child onto medication because his behavior is so much better. There's such a big difference. Yes, is he active? Is he somebody with energy? He will always be. That's his personality. But the fact that they could notice a difference in his retention by only adding a supplement that was pure salmon oil, that is probably something that we should pay attention to. Before you put your child on, like you said, an ADHD stimulant that they would more than likely end up being addicted to or need a stimulant for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. And there's a lot to say about what you said about feeding the oil the right fats, because your brain is 90% fat. And now everything that we're doing, that the modern medicine is teaching the general population out there, is you have to do low fat. You have to take all these fats away and do the heart healthy fats, which is totally baloney, because you're depriving your brain of all these good things that's actually making it work better. And especially think about if you start depriving a young 9-year-old child from good, healthy fats for their brain, what is going to happen to them when they grow up?
And also, if that child doesn't start the day with a protein, if they started with a boxed cereal, like I've said before, even the rats won't eat the cereal, they'll eat the box. If you start that child off in such a manner, he's already got a lower ability of muscle development, and especially for the young boys, when that testosterone really fully hits them and everybody else is like building muscle and they're skinny and they feel like, well, how come my muscles aren't there like it should be? It's because you've been deprived. You've been feeding box food that really doesn't do anything for you and it doesn't feed your brain at all.
Yeah.
Something that just came to a thought of me. I know I don't think you and I are conspiracy theorists. We are truth theorists. And I know for a fact, as much as what I know, that food and marketing is done in such a way that it will be impacting the sale of a drug. Because if you listen to the word food and drug administration, why those things are all in the same line should be very alerting. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm telling you the dead truth here that if something is pushed and marketed as heart healthy, brain healthy, but it's also marketed by the same people that do the drugs, then you should stop and think.
Totally agree. And if you go research, just do a simple Google search and type in revolving door at the FDA. And I'm not want to bash them. I'm pretty sure things have changed in the recent past. But if you look at the directors of the FDA who step out of the FDA and now they're the CEO of a drug manufacturing company,
Or vice versa.
or vice versa, or both. There
Mhm.
was a CEO of a drug manufacturing company who became the director of the FDA and went back being a CEO of a different drug manufacturing company. So,
Exactly.
you really have to wonder. You just have to, go through life with your eyes open. That's all I want to say about that.
And again, when you looked at what we've spoken before, does the benefit outweigh all the negative effects? Now, you look at any of the ADHD medications, and what is alarming, and you and I know when we have to counsel each patient on these things, it's got a very high incidence of addiction. It builds up tolerance. That means you take more and more and more to get the same effect. And when you go and look again, like we said, you go look at the side effects. This is given to kids for many reasons. Some of them would be even for anxiety or for social phobia. But then you go look at the side effects and those kids develop that. So does the benefits really outweigh what is going to be the adverse effects? And when you said earlier on, because I do believe we are not in a society where we teach our kids behavioral things anymore. Manners is one of the things that you don't need a drug for. You need your
Yeah.
child to learn when to talk, when to be quiet, when to respect people, but that's not commonly taught anymore. And if a child does not get any kind of behavioral treatment and they're on this medication till, like you said, 12, 13, 14, I had one of my technicians many years ago, very wealthy family, just fun baby. He was going to get into millions of dollars. He just had to make it till he was till he was 25. And he was on one of these medications. But thank the Lord, Jesus absolutely changed his life. And he realized at the age of 16, 17 that he cannot think for himself because this is putting so much of a dampener on his brain, his creativity, and what the purpose that God had for him. And I remember when he got off this medication, I asked him, what did it feel like? He said, every day felt like I was just living in a dead, empty tomb. And this came directly from a child that was put on the medication from the age of 9, I believe, and 16, 17, he weaned himself off there. So when you go and ask a child like that, what was it like? It's heartbreaking because those are the years when they should be dreaming, when they should be creative, when their mind should be filled with the stuff that they want to be doing, but we're actually putting a dampener on there. And then one of the things you and I know very well, the black box warnings with suicide.
Yep. Yep.
And do you really want to, the child you love so much, you fight so much for, would you really want them exposed to that before trying something? But again, it comes back to, are you willing to make a change in your home, which is going to
Yeah.
affect your child? Because we're living in an age where people want to be very convenient. Like you said, the milk and the cereal, it's so easy to give.
True. And I have to say, I don't want to take away from people who have real ADHD. because I've met somebody like that, and it's absolutely miserable. They can't hold down a job. They really, their brain just goes from one to the other, and nothing ever gets done. Some of those people have real hard times struggling. But I think there's so many times where a diagnosis just gets made just quick in order to appease either a teacher, a parent, or a patient in order to give somebody that drug.
Because sometimes a label gives you, it's a crutch.
Yes, yes. And I have to kind of segue into one of my pet peeves in the pharmacy. I'm sorry I have to go this way. But we have these adult patients who obviously have been on these ADHD medicines for many years. And obviously, if you're on it for many years, the dose also get increased many times over. And now the next prescription they get is a prescription for Xanax.
Oof.
Now, please, what does a stimulant do? Now, ADHD medicine is a stimulant. So what does it do? It stimulates you. It makes all your noradrenaline and these things go up because it wakes you up. That's why some people use it and actually misuse it. And when you're overly stimulated, don't you think you'll have anxiety? So obviously now they need to take they're taking their ADHD medicine and they get anxiety. So instead of decreasing the dose of the ADHD medicine, no, here's some Xanax. That'll help you. It just drives me totally bonkers.
And the verdict is out. The science is out. The results are out. Anybody that prescribes a patient a stimulant plus a benzo, you're either totally ignorant or you really just want to kill that patient or get them out the door because it fries their receptors. It is such a damaging combination and it leads to worse things.
Yeah. And I totally believe also some behavioral treatments are actually more recommended. They might be able to get away with a lower dose of the ADHD medicine and never be a need to have a tranquilizer with it. So, and I think taking a prescription medicine is such an easy fix.
Mm-hmm.
And to do behavioral modification is the harder thing. But that's why we went into functional medicine, because we want to be those people that if you have to make that hard changes, that's not easy, we'll take your hand and walk you through it.
Well, this brings me back to a young patient, a young man, I think he's about 27 years old. I saw him absolutely break down in tears when he discovered that if he changes his diet, he was first very angry, very emotional, lots of tears. I think you also saw the video.
Yeah.
He said if somebody had told him 10, 15 years ago that if he would eat the right protein, the protein the animals God made, not tofu and faux food and, fake food, and if he was told to eat the butter, the lard, and the tallow, and eat the eggs, eat all the food stuff that God created. And yeah, this kid was 27 years old. And I remember he said it took about 4 to 6 weeks and it felt like an absolute mold was lifted off his brain. He could handle things. He could handle the environment. He could think clearer. And he was at first extremely emotional and then he got angry. And he got angry with the fact that why doesn't anybody tell him the truth? Why doesn't anybody always try and butter this up and make it? No, but you probably just have this label. And the anger that I saw them made me realize it's the same as with people who are 30 and 40 years old and have never heard the words Jesus loves you.
Yeah.
We all assume people know these things. They don't. People don't know what they don't know. And this kid, he was 27. And I felt so convicted with that because having to look at somebody like that, you and I know, Johann, every time we fill a prescription for an ADHD drug and we have to listen to these stories where people have lied to themselves, that this can and will be totally changed if you feed your body and your brain what it needs.
Absolutely. And Yvette, another thing that just comes to mind right now, we've talked about this in the past, but there's a lot to say about gut health when it comes to your brain. And people don't realize that. That's why we get our 9-year-old kids and we feed them as much cereal as we can. What does cereal do to your gut health? because
Destroys
most
it.
of those things they're so laden with glyphosate, and glyphosate is a brilliant antibiotic. It kills every bacteria inside. So now you don't have a second brain in your gut. It doesn't produce the chemical messengers that what it should. So you have to go through this extensive process to revive your gut microbiome just so that your brain can work. And people don't realize that. They say, "Oh, but this is in my head. It's all in my head."
And then it goes back to your first question. You always ask people, like you've said, oh, feed my child a healthy diet. And you know what always it absolutely breaks my heart is when you go into a person's pantry and they have young children and they have Costco boxes of these little tubes with applesauce. The
My
little bottles with apple juice, all the little cans and the little fruit juices and all these snacks because my child has to snack. No, they don't. And you look at the ingredients in those things are freely available. I remember growing up as a kid when we would go buy something like a snack at the Snoopy, as we would call it, that happened once a week. These kids have it at their free disposal. They walk into a pantry and it's lying in front of them, box after box after box, in quantities that their body cannot accommodate. And you ask to yourself now, why is this happening? And then you also have the same thing with regards to the ADHD medication where their appetite is suppressed. But they're first going to reach out to those little tubes, little boxes, little cans before they get their food. And what you were saying to the mom is give the child a protein. And the mom was like, but what about the cereal?
Yes. And what does a cereal do? It actually promotes hunger. Why? Because the carbohydrate burns through your system, and then now there's no more energy. Now we need to get more energy. But the toxins that comes with that cereal, those remain. It does not take 2 hours to get out of your system. It may be 2 years, maybe 20 years before it's fully out of your system.
So now if we have to speak to a parent that's really willing to change the whole family, I know you and I always start with the first thing is go and look in your pantry.
Yeah.
First of all, you should not be eating out of the pantry. You should be eating out of the fridge. Because if it's in the pantry food is things for hunger. It's for times of really serious, there's a bomb blast and we
Famine.
can't get food, for famine. That's what the pantry should be like. The food should come out of the fridge. And if you and I can just go a little bit through what we will tell parents, where do you start? What do you buy?
Number one, I would say, like you say, get rid of a lot of stuff in your pantry and go read the label. Seed oils, I would say, and you know, me and Yvette, we will probably go on about seed oils nonstop because they are so damaging. So if there's anything, canola oil, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, cornflower oil, all those type of things, get rid of it right away. Additives. Like I say, read the label. You probably won't have anything left in your pantry if you see our list. And rightfully so. Then it shouldn't be there. If you want to poison your family, if you don't like them, okay, well, that's your prerogative.
What do we always say? Clean the pantry and give it to somebody you don't like.
Yes, but then replace it with good, healthy, real food. And especially, we always want to tell people to focus on the protein.
Mm-hmm.
And animal meat, no, not these that's made somewhere in a laboratory. Those are terrible.
Lab-grown meat. Why in the world would you want to eat that?
Yeah,
Ugh.
no, thank you. So get some real protein in you, some red meat. Chicken is okay. I feel chicken has a little bit, the balance of the omega-6 oils is a little too high to my liking. If it's once in a while, it's fine. But red meat, especially lamb, is extremely nutritious. Eggs is probably the best meal, balanced meal you can have.
And you know, for the egg, just quickly to explain to people, because the egg, the protein and the fat ratio is so good that it's one of the most complete things you can give a child. And for
Yeah.
years we've been told, oh, children are going to be allergic to that. Stop that nonsense. Give them the eggs. Let them get that in there because that's a very good complete combination. And just one thing to touch on, I know you mentioned additives, spices. Please look at your spices. Please look what's in there. So many of them have the maltodextrin and added sugars. Look at those spices. Very important.
Yeah, especially, and also if you look at that spices list and you can't pronounce it, you probably should also not eat it.
Now, MSG, which has taken on so many different names, which has been natural flavor, it's a known neurotoxin. Get it out of their food. If you give your kids ramen noodles, oh my gosh, you might as well pour MSG down their throats.
Yep, yep. And if it sounds like a chemical, no, that's not food, it's a chemical. A chemical allowed in food is still a chemical. It's still not a food. So that was on protein. And then I want to go to the next one, which is fats. I would say make sure you get good, healthy fats in there. We all now got rid of the seed oils. You started to eat the proteins. So use good, healthy fats. And butter is so important. We talked about the gut microbiome, and people will go, but about your gut microbiome needs fiber. What do you say about that, Yvette?
Gosh, it's one of those topics that for years and years, Johann and I were spinning a lie, telling stuff that we were taught. And when we went and looked at the science of it and we looked at the biology, but this makes no sense. If my drain is blocked, why would I put wood chips in there? That's exactly what you're doing with fiber. And the whole 30 grams of fiber sweeping like a broom, when you look deeper into that, there was no science. Somebody pulled 30 grams out of their rear end. We have no idea where that came from. No basis of that at all. And when you start realizing again, you've been sold on a lie, so you can eat more cereal and it's got lots of fiber and those things, then you catch a bit of a wake-up call, because fiber is not essential at all. You never, ever, ever. A person that eats good fat and protein will have the most beautiful bowels, bowel movement. We have dealt with somebody who was, 65 years old before she had a regular bowel movement every day, and she said it was the most beautiful thing. Why?
Mhm.
We removed the fiber. Because again, we've been taught something that when we stopped and we discussed it, both Johann and I had an aha moment. And there's actually a lot of people that think like we do, and they learned. So for the fiber, you don't need fiber. Your gut is so healthy when you eat butter. Butter has butyric acid, and it is fantastic for that environment, for it to grow all the correct microbiome.
Yep. And I just wanted to say, because people say, but fiber is a prebiotic, your gut microbiome needs it to make the butyric acid. I think you actually strain your gut microbiome by giving it the fiber, because now it has to work harder. If you just give them the straight butter, they're way more effective. Now they don't have to work that hard in order to make that butyric acid that
Yeah.
comes from butter anyway.
And when Johann and I talk about lard and tallow and butter, and we talk about eggs, chicken, we do as much as possible recommend you get grass-fed. Organic has had such a watered down meaning to it. Getting something directly from the source. If you have chickens in your backyard, those chickens are fantastic. If you go buy a chicken that's on the big farm lot and the same as the cows, yeah, you're going to have a little bit of a different impact with the increase in omega-6s. So constantly when we do talk about these, we are talking about the highest grade.
Yeah.
With the butter, the highest grade, the one that's from the grass-fed beef. So keep that in mind. But if you cannot afford the grass-fed butter and you cannot afford the expensive eggs, whatever you can use is better than doing the ones that are manufactured in a plant.
100%. That is so true. And I know many people can't afford it, but if you just get the regular ones that is still made by an animal, you're way better off than 90% of anybody who's eating anything manufactured in a plant. So yeah, just stick with it.
And, for the children, being able to feed them a meal is more effective than constantly giving them snacks. So when a child, like you were talking about, that does take this medication, if you want your child to get better, change the diet. You can subsequently, over a period of time, go to a lower dose of the medication. But do not give your kid all these sugary, bagged snacks to take with them to school. What is wrong with a boiled egg? What is wrong with making a meatball? What's wrong with those things? And once you see the improvement in your child, that extra effort that you are making is going to make a huge difference in your.
I want to add this as a final point to this discussion, especially when it comes to kids. We have to realize that these big food companies, they don't have any social responsibility towards your child. They've got the only responsibility they have is a financial responsibility towards their shareholders. So if you want your child to grow up healthy, you are, as a parent, are the one who is going to have to own the social responsibility towards your child. Because these big companies, if they can have multiple units of their product in their home, they're going to go out of their way to do it. And
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, our school systems don't help because the way these food companies get their foods into your house is to feed it to your kids at school.
Uh-huh.
Because now they have it at school, and then the next moment your child goes grocery shopping with you. Mom, we had this at school and this was so good. Before you know it, it's in your shopping cart.
And also the impact of all these drinks, the sports drinks, the sodas, that is very freely available. I mean, America is probably the only country in the world where you can get a refill on sodas. How many people need to have 1.5 liters of a soda or a pop at a meal? You don't. But before you know it, that cup is being filled and being filled. And also the awareness to people to know that these energy drinks is a big ripoff. It's very detrimental for children's health. And I've also seen as children get older and they excel in sport, how every second child has a sports drink. They don't need any of that. They honestly don't. They need minerals and they need water. So if you can break that train of thought to think your child needs to have this energy drink to give them that boost, no, you are hurting them. You are harming them. You're not helping them.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to, energy drinks is another one of my pet peeves because I tell you, if you go look at the ingredients, it is absolute poison to your brain. Absolute poison to your brain. Nobody really needs to drink it because those excitatory chemicals that is in there is really damaging. Unfortunately, it somehow slipped past regulation and now it is okay to have them freely available.
And I don't know if you've seen in the aisles, Johann, it used to be these energy drinks in the cans. There used to be like a straight down now. Now, most of the stores that I've been into is of one entire
Yes.
wall of energy drinks. Blows my mind. Are we so lacking energy?
Yeah, no, and these energy shots as well. Again, it's poison to your brain.
You know, something I saw years ago when Red Bull came out, I don't want to always mention names, but this was quite interesting. It was in the late 90s, and it was the first time we encountered this. And I looked at a can of it in my pharmacy, and I didn't find it on later on, but on the bottom of the label was made by the Brainwash Corporation.
My goodness, wow.
If you look at the history of how the marketing was done, it makes you, gives you wings, makes you fly, all that kind of stuff. So we look back to where that originated from, and now from the 120 different flavors and the energy. And I don't think our ancestors lacked energy 100 years ago when they were working on the farms and plowing the lands and they
Yeah,
had to have a horse cart. So
they probably had more energy than what we do today.
makes you think.
Yep.
Talking about energy, talking about being tired and muscle pain, a very common situation you and I will both get is somebody maybe in the front aisle, they ask you for help because they have joint pain, they have muscle pain, and the body hurts. And I know I'm getting older, so I do understand this, but can you point me in the right direction? I get numerous phone calls on looking for drug coverage for something that would help for joint pains, muscle aches, general malaise, fatigue, everything hurts. And it's very easy to point somebody to an anti inflammatory gel or put a patch on. But if you speak to a person and you ask them, Johann and I are going to ask the same question as always. So, when did this start? How does this feel? How long have you had it? General questions, things that I think anybody should ask before you point to something on a shelf. And one of the most common thought processes are that I'm getting older, so it's very normal.
Not so normal. No, we're all getting older. And talking of which, if I can have a 100-year-old patient still walking upright into the pharmacy to come and get his prescriptions, bright as a bell, then it's not because of your age. There is something else going on. And what is another thing that we commonly ask, Yvette? What are you eating?
Mm-hmm.
So this lifestyle and our lifestyle choices has a lot to do with how we feel and how we experience life in our bodies. Those aches and pains, you know, I've had it. Before I made a change, you get out of bed and we used to say in Afrikaans, you staan op met paaiamente. It takes you a few phases to actually get out of bed. And the reason for that is inflammation, because you're so stiff that you find it hard to move. When you get up out of a chair, it takes you a few seconds to come upright. All those things is due to inflammation. And once you start reducing the inflammation in your body, one day you'll just find out, oh, I remember I used to get up this way and now I don't.
And the accumulation again of medication over the years, it started out, you and I don't think we'll ever get tired of the topic of they first started me on something, my blood sugar was high. So I took some metformin. Then they started me, now my blood pressure is not well. I went on to lisinopril. But now I'm 45, 50, I better take a statin drug. So as the years progress and you take these medications, nobody really asks you about your quality of life because your blood work looks wonderful. But again, I will say this over and over till the day I am put my foot in the grave is blood work in Western medicine are only done for things that we have drugs for to treat.
Yes.
So you're not going to get blood work done for things that you have to change your diet. So keep that in mind. So when your blood work is perfect, it doesn't mean you are living a healthy, optimal life. So you accumulate over the years, one drug and the next one and the next one, and you get into this whole phase of, well, there's got to be something else that helps me with this muscle aches and body aches. How bad is it? It's really bad. Can you get up in the morning? I really struggle. Are you still working in the yard? Are you able to go walk with your friend? No, it really hurts. I'm so tired. That's not longevity. That's not health. That's not
No.
good numbers.
Yeah. I want to quickly throw this in there. I don't know if you've seen the platform where we order our functional labs from. They've added a new lab company that is commonly used by doctors as well. So I went on there to see what can we use in our functional medicine practice. All the labs on there is also geared to point towards a prescription drug. So I'm a little disappointed because I was hoping to see some positive move in there, but that was unfortunately not something that we'll be able to use.
It's something in a generation that's our generation and older when they always say my numbers look good. And then my next question is, but do you feel good? No, I don't. I feel like crap.
Yeah.
Can't get up. I don't want to socialize. I'm depressed. I have anxiety. I can't connect the dots. I really have a very hard time. And yes, we should have sympathy and we should have understanding. But surely at some point you should say, this isn't working for me. How can I move from what our podcast is from medicated to motivated? What's going to happen?
Yeah. Lifespan and health span.
Yeah.
Do you want to be 80 and broken, or do you want to be 80 and running marathons? I'd rather be 80 and taking care of myself than being 80 and need several caretakers because I can barely make it to the bathroom.
Yeah. So coming back to the question that we always have, I have myalgia, my joints pain, my muscles ache. Do you ever encourage somebody to take just another drug?
One thing after what are you eating is let's look at your prescription drugs. Where's your prescription list? Do you get all your medicines from my pharmacy or do you get it elsewhere too? So then if you pull up that prescription list, there are things that is common denominators. And I would say statins is usually a big culprit in both that it causes both energy and aches and pains.
Your PPIs that don't allow you to absorb vitamin Bs? You
Yep.
become anemic. Your body you don't have the energy. So all of a sudden there's your energy levels, your muscles hurt, ache. So we've two things you and I could just straight off the bat see.
Yep. And think about the anticholinergics because now their bladder doesn't work. All of those things now it's additive effects because now they have the PPI, they have the statin, they have the anticholinergic, and they all work together to make you feel miserable,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
make you stiff as a rod that you can't move.
And that also then being older, being that uncomfortable, it also leads to falls. It leads
Yeah.
to sprains. It leads to hurting yourself. And those, so many people will say, oh, my bones deteriorated. No, actually, your mobility and flexibility was a big reason for that, but it was because of what you were taking. So people have to be extra careful when they take anything of this and they really aren't being mobile or they physically able to do things. They can sprain their back so easily because they're trying to reach up something they can't pick it up because it hurts. So just straight off the bat, you and I can really see common denominators, but also looking in a bit deeper, you and I know most people that start with those three end with an average of between 10 and 12 drugs.
Yeah.
I think the number has grown, but over the last years, it's 10 to 12.
And you know that you mentioned the 10 to 12 drugs, Yvette. I've not too recent, but I remember doing continued education where the authors mentioned that if you take 3 or more prescription drugs, it is almost impossible to predict the interactions between them. And now you take some of these drugs for what you thought your problems were, and the other half for the side effects and interactions to counter all the rest of them. In the end, the only way you can function is to be this chemical machine
Mm-hmm.
that is run by a bunch of things that is made in a pharmaceutical laboratory in order to just get you from one day to the next.
And, if I can encourage people that are on chronic medication, the one thing I want to encourage you to do is ask for a review of your medicines. You can even go to a retail pharmacy. I know I did it in retail. You can punch in all the drugs and you can actually print it out for somebody. You're allowed to do that. If they are too busy, like I work for a PBM, you can call them, but make the effort of looking at that so that you can see if there is something really common here that I'm struggling with. Instead of putting it down as normal, I'm getting older, it's part of my family. Maybe it's something you're missing in the sense of take this drug away and change my diet and change my lifestyle.
Yeah. And if you are on Medicare, your prescription drug plan pays the pharmacy for a service called comprehensive medication review.
You might not like the interpretation of what that pharmacist gives you because they could be very bought out and sold out to the world of medicine. I'm not saying all of them are, but there are pharmacists that do believe that drugs is the answer to everything. One day something will happen in their life and they'll change their minds. But you are able to get that, and that information is going to be given to you. You don't have to always go with their interpretation, but if you can get the printout, that can help you. That can be a start.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. And especially if you're on multiple medications, you owe it to yourself to get that done. Go to a pharmacist and tell him, can you please do a comprehensive medication review for me? These are the ones I get from you. These are the ones I get from mail order or wherever the case may be. But please help me to understand why am I taking multiple prescription medicines and what is the effect they have on each other and the combined effect on my body. That will really help you out to make a clear decision about your healthcare going in the future.
And something I will end off with is I have found it immensely common that people do not know why they are taking certain drugs.
Yep.
And that is problematic for me. So when you do have this comprehensive study done and you do find out what things are for, I honestly am shocked when somebody calls and says, I've been on gabapentin for 20 years. I don't know why I'm on it. And we know that over the years, the indication for that has grown, but I don't know what they're using it for. They don't even know what they're using it for. Why are you using it? So I want you to become very purposeful in your questions and knowing why you are taking something. If you don't know, then that is a red flag.
For sure. One thing that I do when I have to do a CMR is I start with the first drug and I'll ask them, why are you taking this? And like Yvette said, so many people don't know why they're taking these drugs. And the reason we ask, why are you taking this drug, is because there are some medicines who can be used off-label for different things.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned gabapentin. Gabapentin was originally discovered as an anti-seizure drug. 90% of people taking gabapentin are not taking it for seizures.
So if you see a patient and they say they're on gabapentin and you tell them, well, gabapentin is for seizures, they're going to freak out.
Yeah.
So that's why we want to know, what do you think it's being used for? Because if you don't know the off-label, we might completely freak you out. But sorry, I said I wasn't going to close over this, but it made me think of your one question that you have, and I love it because we've always gotten that. I need refills on my prescription.
Yeah, and then you don't, but your outer refills will ask your doctor for it. Yes, but my doctor knows I need it.
This comes to me to, it really encompasses the whole discussion we have where you think that your doctor goes home at night, same as the pharmacist, and we worry about you. No, you are the one that have to be purposefully driven into looking at, what am I taking? Why am I taking it? What are the interactions? Because yes, we do have an obligation to share things with you, but you ultimately have to take care of yourself.
Yeah. I read a book some time ago, and I would recommend this book for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's listening to this podcast should go and read this book. It's called Extreme Ownership. It's written by a Navy SEAL. And I tell you, I want to say you have to take extreme ownership over your health, because ultimately your future and your family's future, that responsibility lies on your shoulders, not the doctor, not the pharmacist, no, not the nutritionist, not anybody else who is in your healthcare team. You're the CEO. You have the responsibility.
You know what? I think that is a very unpopular opinion for a lot of people when it comes to health.
Yep.
Johann, I think this was awesome. This was fun. It's really enlightening for us to share this. I know there's a lot of people that didn't know they could have a comprehensive medication review. I know, and I understand a lot of people are scared to ask and who to ask, but knowing that we are there are other pharmacists like us, there are people willing to help. You just need to ask.
Yes, 100%. I agree. And just ask. It does take some time, so a pharmacist might not have time at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But if you ask them, they can prepare it in the downtime and then come in for when there's an appropriate time for them to discuss it with you. But that is something that is available. And like I say, if you are taking multiple medications, that is definitely, you cannot continue your life without having a comprehensive medication review done for you.
Yes.
I hope we can leave you with some value today. So if you like this podcast, please rate it in the App Store and share it with someone. I'm pretty confident somebody needs to hear what we had to say on this podcast. So share it with as many people as you like or you know.
We want you to grow in the army of people that are wanting to change their life and get better results.
Yes, 100%. All right, so that is it. Until the next time, take care, everyone.
Cheerio.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Views and opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and are intended for educational and informational purpose only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The information shared should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice from your personal health care provider. Always consult your physician, pharmacist, or qualified health professional before making any changes to medications, supplements, or health regimens. We are also promoters of Neolife Nutritionals, beauty, and household products, and this stems from our knowledge of their purity and the company's reputation to provide products of outstanding quality. While we may discuss our experiences in the retail pharmacy setting and share insights into functional medicine, our conversations reflect our professional perspectives and personal opinions, and not those of our employers, affiliated organizations, or licensing boards. By listening to From Pills to Purpose podcast, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your own health decisions and agree that the host and guests are not liable for any outcomes resulting from the use of the information discussed in this podcast.